Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
There we are. I'd like to introduce Gordon Goldner, our IT developer at Spokane Public Library. Robert Bruce, Support Services Director of the Spokane Public Library, and myself, the IT manager. Yeah. Oh, and my name is Joseph. Hello. Pleasure to meet you guys. So I have notes. I'm a guy who likes to have notes, likes to be prepared. So forgive me if I have to reference my paper. But anyone who's worked with library technology knows that it's slow sometimes when you have a niche need in your ILS or your system that you need to change. And so what Spokane Public Library I'm sorry, I'm going to take a deep breath here. In our post-pandemic world, Spokane experienced a sharp increase in incidents involving the public, and our staff and safety services were responsible for dealing with that uptick. What happened is our antiquated single-page reporting application was rendered obsolete just by the fact that we had increased volume, increased incidences. So a group of stakeholders from our institution tried to find a alternative that would integrate with our ILS, which was Horizon at the time, and then later FOLIO. And what we found was that the cost of such a system for a public library was just out of the question. And what defined MDP, it completely missed all of our design and analysis. So onto the scene comes FOLIO, and we have this opportunity to create a custom yet customizable application. You can go on the slide, Gordon. So one of the challenges with developing FOLIO, however, is that Java developers are expensive. And underfunded or underserved libraries might not have the opportunity to pay for Java development or an application in their ILS, or pay to their vendor to do so, right? And this can seem kind of counterintuitive considering that FOLIO is such an open application. You can take advantage of that architecture. So thankfully, EBSCO and the Washington State Library saw potential of FOLIO in the hands of Spokane, and they funded in part a full-time developer for us to do whatever we want. So we hired Christopher Brown, and we're off to the races on developing a new security incident reporting application using our existing one-page application as a visual wireframe, while also having all the existing needs analysis having been done by the stakeholders previously. And so with that, I'm going to let Gordon talk about where we went from there in terms of back-end design choices.
So because we're a small place and a small development house, we decided to forego Java because it's really not our wheelhouse. And with our budget for a developer, we're looking both local and within our means. Also, I'm opinionated. We all are, right? So in this case, we were doing a test. This particular application is just a very simple CRUD application. It's just taking data, storing it, not a big, and giving it back to you at some point. And some validation to make sure you're doing it right, probably. So you can do that anywhere. In this case, we're using Python and Flask. Because one, that's my most familiar, and I could find somebody and tutor a junior developer into doing what we need with FOLIO. The main problems we foresaw is that that there are in a security incident reporting tool, you need to store evidence, and some of this evidence may be legal criteria later. So there needs to be it needs to have some security concerns. It also has to be either cloud compatible or premise available. For us, we were running it on-prem. So this particular application on-prem, but we're having to make sure that it can be run in the cloud for anybody else. The other main issue that we had is that one thing I can't tutor is I'm not a React developer at all, and that's always going to be a requirement. So we did have to look for a developer that was their core competencies. And that turned out, that actually was probably the biggest success of this, is that the online stripes documentation was enough to get him running. On the other hand, a rather junior developer, all of the context of libraries and Folio were definitely missed and very difficult to find, to do the thing, and that definitely needed some handholding to get there. So this is, I would say this is probably version 0.9 is where we're at. We're very close to a release. As I said, we're trying to model as much of the same metaphors that Folio gives you as much as possible, but also working with our needs. Again, this is just a simple Folio app. This is also, or sorry, just a simple CRUD app. The oddities maybe also sometimes, again, junior developer running his first app may have made some choices that we wouldn't have made. That we're working, but again, 1.0 we can resolve over time.
Way and start off.
The main thing that this is doing is able to, its main needs is it needs to be able to store users that are in the system and users that are not in the system that may just be incidental and that we may only have a description of, we may have no name. We have to be able to store pictures of them. We have to be able to store an auditable report over time. At this point, it is not storing an auditable report. It is assuming that a description can be edited over time. That, in my opinion, is not auditable, but this is a first go. One of the next features for us is that we have a specific set of criteria that we consider trespassable offenses or criteria that are not trespasses, just incidents that we want to report on that follow our board safety documentation. So they end up as a nice hierarchical list. We tried to make this so it is, however, very customizable to anybody else's needs, so they could put in whatever forms of standard documentation they want. Right now, its only tie-in to the rest of Folio is that it looks up users. There's no other tie-in. We do plan on some other tie-ins and some more important features. One, in our team wants much strong granular notification support for specifically team notification, not teams, team notification. This is how the word gets in the way in space. It might be on Teams, but I want to notify a team that a report has been saved in the system, and possibly other particular statuses about trespasses and things like that, so the right people get notified about it.
So yeah, and I'll talk a little bit about those. That the Teams, Microsoft Teams, Slack, or email notification based on certain configurable criteria. So in our situation, when there's a new trespass issue, staff, particularly at our central or downtown branch, they want to be notified that day. If there's an expiring or upcoming expiring trespass, they would also like to be notified. So right now, this is a manual process. For reporting, MetaDB is going to be a must for us in order to be able to track frequencies, times of zones, different times of days, zones or areas inside particular libraries. And then Gordon had alluded to being on-prem is where we're storing our backend module. And the ability to tighten down permissions on what users may or may not be able to retrieve media from an incident might be important. I know it's going to be important for our organization that, we might have a contracted security guard as an example, as opposed to a staff member, organization hired security officer. And then hopefully we can get profile pictures to work with the user import and connection that we have. And then trespass automation is the next one. So right now, our institution does a number of steps and processes every time a user is trespassed. To name a few, we apply a block template on the account. We change the patron group to trespass, and we change the meeting room permissions, which is an extension, a custom field that we use with our Communico room booking applications for meeting rooms. And so the idea is to have the tool, the security incident report, eventually automate this whole process of everything you see here and notify the staff. Additionally, this is another big one that our staff identified, is that we'd be able to configure the exact trespass language as required by our municipality. And this would be configurable for any institution, that once that trespass is issued in the security incident report, it immediately presents you with the printable version so you can serve the trespass individual, and it updates the information in the incident reporting app as well, indicating that that person has been trespassed. Later on, the second part is being able to negate all of these changes when the expiration comes, or through mediation, which sometimes happens with a member of the public and staff members. And so through this whole experience, we've definitely learned a lot about the FOLIO ecosystem and how to make these things play nice. We've also been doing some work on our catalog, which kind of dovetails into our next. Oh, no, not there yet. So yes, one of the things that Christopher identified, if I put it back on now, sorry, is he, between completing 1.0 release of our security incident report app and what we're going to work on next, he's going to build out a just a blank CRUD application with all the documentation that he needed in his mind to get started. So when he was getting started, it was a lot of read and try and read and try and read, and then try again. And so rather than having, we're gonna present those same tools that he ended up developing on the fly, available to the community if anybody else wants to just get started with a full application that's ready to run and go, and you can learn as you're developing with a make and break ready application. But we're gonna put our money where our mouth is first. The next application that we're building, Christopher's going to do it based on what he created. So he's gonna find all his own deficiencies in his second attempt using this boilerplate CRUD application, so.
And the main reasons that we started with the security app is that it was just a CRUD application, so it had a very short development cycle for going 1.0. It will be more complex over time, but we're going to move on to something else, because this is another primary need that we've seen in our application, or that we have an application for, but it's aged and we would rather have the application built into FOLIO. So we are working on a. You get to talk. This is now yours. So
give a little ancient history, but I'll step back just a little bit. When I first heard about FOLIO and the openness, the ability to add an app, that is what sold me. As was probably Sebastian Hammer said, look at your phone. If you don't like your weather app, you can get a different weather app. And so I said, finally, this is a revolution that we should jump over. So where did we start? Boy, it was around 2009 when I restarted Spokane Public Library. All the new materials requests were paper. The customer had to choose between a materials request for purchase or interlibrary loan. It went into a black hole. If we ordered it, yay, it showed up. If not, they knew nothing about it. So At the same time, you have things like WorldCat, Amazon, people's awareness of metadata or materials out there was just ballooning. And so volume was going to expand enormously. So what were we trying to solve? Problem of volume. We also were trying to solve communication with the customer. We also had to make sure we collected enough information to identify the items. We also had to distribute this workload between staff. And we wanted to communicate with our ILS. ILS has our customer information. Next slide, so this was our first foray.
To be clear, this is the old system.
Yes, this is the old system.
So we're replacing.
So there's my name. So it would look up in Horizon at the time and pull in the customer barcode, email address, phone number, the pickup location, and if the customer wanted ILL or not, and then information about the item. So, and then a place to write a message to the customer here as well. And if you don't see it here, but this comment could be for staff only or for customers. So another interesting thing is that this had statuses. So as it went through our processes, it would say, oh, we're looking at it now, we've ordered it, or we could change it to another queue, which would be interlibrary loan. And so it's
basically set up as a Kanban queue. So and we'll probably emulate that because it's a pretty useful metaphor.
And so some of these different steps would trigger messages to the customer. So they get an email. We're not buying this. We have purchased it. It's on the way. Your item is here, that kind of thing. So it could interface with the ILS and use the ILS communication system as well. Then we got FOLIO and everything was broken. But Gordon, I think you were able to restore.
We have a very small integration so that it can still pull in a user.
But all this exists outside of the ILS or LSP. So my dream is that maybe this could become part of FOLIO.
We anticipate about a year of development on this, and that's before we get back to working on seconds. But I expect some sprints on the security bits and report as well. That was basically what we were saying. The main plan is that so again, opinionated, planning on going with a GoLink backend, mostly because that's my favorite to work with. Makes tiny artifacts, has a lot less easy. It's much easier to support containerization than Java to me, and I avoid Java. It's going to be a combination of an ILL and new material request, as how Tara put it, patron-driven demand.
Yeah.
The
patron-driven acquisition.
a big part. A big part of this will also be integration with VuFind, because we want to get as many ways to notify the customer what's going on with their request. But this is pie in the sky. It's future. This is what we've really been working on.
Yes. So I wanted to talk on this.
Oh.
The next one. So we have another developer, our in-house full stack. And what I gave him a little task on the side to build an actual module or an extra module for VuFind. And so we've added this to the profile page in order to accept STL files for 3D printing that we do in shop for customers. And so not only can they submit their request, but they can see whether or not it's been accepted, how long it's in the queue for. And then we have an administrator panel on the other side on our info dashboard that allows us to track, measure the filament size, stuff like that. So this was kind of the proof of concept for our other developer to build something into VuFind for tracking and managing this, since this is how we want to ingest the new material requests from the customer. Having that layer of authentic or authorization, right, signing into my profile, having to be an active library patron to submit that request will help alleviate the bogus requests that come from some patrons. And so while our developer Josh was working on this, Christopher had been working on the security app. So we did them in tandem with the intention that our next project will be new material request application in Folio UI and an additional extension of VuFind for this.
So we've been doing a lot of enhancements to VuFind over the last year or so. This was one of the low-hanging fruit and easy ones, but also it also had its whole pile of small issues. Another small one that we had is that we added some new material rivers. That's these instead of using VuFind's functionality, we had to which we didn't know existed at the time because we built something. But this was actually where we put more effort here is at a glance lend and request availability. This was a built-in page to Folio to VuFind, but we did need to do quite a bit of work to make it look the way we wanted. Mostly things like limiting it so it's showing a single entry for a call if it has the same availability per location. So only showing the minimum amount of data per location, but there's no duplicates. The whole goal being to show what is available. Also, I had fun making those icons.
At a glance. Being able to see what's available at a glance.
This is our old view, our current view. So we haven't deployed this yet, but it's very, very close. Which this multiple locations that I was showing was very difficult to parse for any customer. They had to click into the item with one more click to find anything. The main body of work, actually, the thing that triggered us working on that was that we were working on integrating title level holds into VuFind for ourselves. The title level requests, while VuFind supported them, it didn't support how VuFind required a request to be in paged or hold status depending on its availability. So it required some detection of what was going on. And since while we were under the hood, we did a lot of other things that included making it so you could tell whether you should be able to put a hold on it or not. Also, we needed to be able to tell whether you could put a hold on it or not. A lot of that requestability logic turned into nice custom features. For example, the service location list is context sensitive now in that it compared to patron group or the material type and where they're allowed to go. For example, we have some library of things. For example, the guitar can't fit in our kiosks, so we can't send them there. But people will try. Also, we are a very small consortium in that we have 6 middle schools that we maintain their libraries for. Okay, 8 now. It keeps getting the number keeps getting bigger. But non-school patrons can't send their books there. They can order books from there. They're just slower. Part of this, we also found that VuFind's interactions with Folio were quite slow. And I say very slow. Like when I did turn on that status page, that status full page, that we were down to 25-second load times. Because of the way that the number of times that it was calling Folio during the hitless generation, and a weird decision that had been made at some point where a batched request was getting unbatched. So instead of calling Folio once, it was calling Folio 20 times during the hitlist, even though it knew the 20 things it needed to call for. That was a huge change. Also, finding that the inventory view / instances, that endpoint was a huge bonus. What we found is that because it calls the whole triplet of the instance view and holding items, it calls all of the whole document. It presents it a little oddly, but with the reprocessing, it turns into what you want, what I wanted at least. That also is a batchable call, so you can ask for more than one at a time. It does mean you're getting a lot of information during the call, but it's way faster. I was able to take those 25-second generation times down to some second. Still a little slow enough to notice, but only 1 second. The other part of that was we found there's some lazy loading logic that is part of this generation. This turned out to be a not exactly the problem, but it was part of trying to help it, and I kind of like what it ended up with, in that it was only lazy loading what is visible in the window, which is fine, but it could keep loading after that, and so it just made a change so it was able to keep going and keep loading things under the fold after it had loaded above the fold. And this is really just saying, this is the number, this is mostly for you. This is the number of things that needed to be touched to do that. With the exception of that OIDC bridge. Let's see. The other main thing that we've done in the last year is mostly around reporting. We switched to MetaDB, which helped us a lot. There's a fun story that I'll be telling about that. But in order to really leverage MetaDB, we really needed a graphical program, a graphical interface for it. We found that Metabase was a very good fit for us. And so we built a dashboard for it. Initially, I really wanted to call it confessional dashboards, but I got told no. We have a lot in our future this year. So one is, I think there's a lot of optimizations that can be found in caching for VuFind. Talking to Damien already about them. So then he's giving me some ideas on where to look. I am very much would like to take VuFind in a single page application or progressive web app direction. I think that will also give us a lot of potential. We have to rebuild our patron intake. We've had to rebuild it twice since we moved to Folio 1 while we were deploying. Once since then, yeah. It's very simple now. We went from a relatively complex patron intake to a very big accessibility move to simplify it. However, during that simplification, it lost some of the features it needed, which is we're supposed to confirm that our patrons are part of our tax base, and there's a state API that's very easy for us to use, and it's just not being used. The other is we're not doing any confirmation of their contact information, and since that's so easy just to send them an email and click a link, we should be doing it. We currently don't use Folio for any notification. All of that is turned off. For all patron notification, we use a custom solution. But it also means that things like the small notifications about new users and things like that are all not being done either. And so that one big drop off in that is our customers can't reset their pins at the moment on their own. And we have a thing that we have extended our hours past our normal hours with self-service hours, where there's one staff member who's really not supposed to help them, which is that's a whole issue in our institution at the moment. But that means we need to provide tools that any patron can help themselves. And missing things like the reset pin was a big hurt. We use a Mecha for a lot of image archiving. We have a small special collection that is well maintained, but it isn't well surfaced with the rest of our catalog. We've also found that we need to move basically all of our digital services mark out of Folio. And it's really just clutter there. We don't need to maintain it. And so we need to move it out of Folio and make it so it's just adjusted into VuFind. We're also about to change all of our cataloging type in Dewey, that's going to have a lot of implications to any maps that we might want to make browsing and VuFind easier. Before I get into, sorry, there was some chat questions. Let's see. Oh, apparently the audio wasn't working. That's great.
That's a picture of a long-serving member of our staff, and someone is watching from home, and they're saying, "That's true."
All right, the horror story, which this was with a very big thank you to Index Data to solve the help with this, but it turns out. So I use Postman a lot.
Wait, can I stop here?
Sure.
Kids, don't try this at home.
Do not. So, big recommendation, don't save any delete endpoints in your in Postman. What I found is that, like the fact that you can delete everything with SQL, you can also do it with any of our endpoints. And they filter. So you could, for example, copy a tab that you were deleting a user from, and then in that tab, filter for a specific set of users while forgetting to change the verb, and then hit enter, thinking you're also on the test system, and you were, and then going to the live system and doing it again while you can't realize what wasn't going wrong. Managed to delete all of our students out of the system twice. However, with MetaDB, it's journalized, and so we were able to get them back very quickly. It was like 4 hours that Wayne was able to get them back in. That was.
It was scary.
It was very scary.
But I have to chime in that I will promote MetaDB for anybody. For whatever your use case is, having MetaDB with up to the second journalized entries is invaluable. We've leveraged MetaDB for building like pick list reports or collection reports, seeing real-time circulation data, and being able to compare that in real time with the automated material handlers, you know, what circulation is there. Gate counts, cross-referencing that, it all becomes really valuable. So I can't stress how much MetaDB, how valuable it is to any FOLIO organization. If you don't have it, you know, see if talk to your doctor and see if you need
Any questions, comments? Because we're way early, because I talk fast.
Just on the stuff you did with VuFind, there was twice optimization. I think there was speed and another one caching, right?
Yep.
Have these been? My first question is: have these been brought back to the VuFind?
No, because they were very recent, so they're.
But you.
Yes, in fact, I probably will talk to Demian probably right after this. and there happens to be a session about FOLIO driver development a little later.
Know that the Latin American libraries that are working in FOLIO, they also really want a request materials from their patrons at have you guys done any like Slack marketing on like, hey, we're thinking about building next, and is anybody else interested? And
not yet. I've been told to talk to Lehigh as well, because they have an external tool as well that has a lot of interesting integrations, and so we very much plan on talking to anybody that wants to work with us.
Yeah, the goal, I was talking with Rob about this the other day, that beyond just initial discussion in Slack channels, I don't know a great way to get feedback back and start ingesting those suggestions. So being able to start with a basic wireframe, which is, we have one written now, and it's loosely based on what we, you know, our existing visual wireframe from our existing system. But I've been trying our best not to have it all Spokane centric, right? Same thing with that incident reporting tool. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get more community feedback on the new material request as well.
Our goal it's not exactly us first, but it is, everything is with the plan to make it a proper open source project.
Yeah.
Though, because every developer screws up at the beginning, at some point of leaving config somewhere, I always keep our repo private until I complete it.
I'd like to give a shout out to Index Data for helping install the application.
Yeah, Index Data is our host, and we currently, as you saw, we have it running in our test instance, and it's we've already gone through a 2-week testing period with our security guards as well as staff, doing basically a needs
Having them
assessment
do
and
double entry between our current system and that system.
Yeah, they were
Can't keep them doing that for very long.
Yeah, a parallel use case. And so, we've already gathered feedback from that and, so far so good. And we're excited for a 1.0 release to actually get rid of our deprecated, security trackers, so. Very soon.
Is there a correlation between FOLIO and an increase in security incidents in the library?
Well, when we moved to Folio, we did have to take the pitchforks and gardening tools out of the collection, library of things.
Correlation is not causal. There's a
Well, for
correlation about many things.
FOLIO has traditionally been really designed by academic libraries, and you guys are one of the very first public libraries to implement it. Is there any like certain holes that are driving you nuts about FOLIO? Is there anything that's like really?
TLR was the big one. TLR was the giant one. So having it resolved recently is helping a lot. Though integrating VuFind with that was a priority.
That was the most significant, patron impacting feature was title level requests.
Yeah.
And so while our staff, vocalized that on behalf of the patrons, they were the ones having to deal with that on a day-to-day, right? The face-to-face interaction was, this is so complicated, I have to select a particular copy of, this branch, I don't care where it comes from. And so, for the public, that was the most impactful.
It also meant it was a lot of staff time reorganizing the request list.
Rebalancing.
Yeah.
Something goes missing, you have to move the request.
The other part is this kind of small development that works with that works more tightly integrated with Folio, because to me is better if it can show up in Folio than be a separate tool. Particularly if it's it needs to integrate with users, things like that. I will see, because of those kinds of small developments, things like a request I will probably put into the community at some point is having a pluggable interface so that I can surface new information in the user's accordions. Because I would really want those trespasses to show up there beyond the built-in block information. And currently there's no way to do that without hacking, like either building a custom strikes module or hacking from JavaScript outside.
There is one other.
Actual cost.
Yeah, so, in 2022, we implemented, this is one deficiency for public libraries that I think needs to be addressed. And that is, there's no way, to automate the billing of the actual cost of an item to the customer. So a patron loses their $22 book and you can charge them a flat fee, right? $5 or whatever, or you have to manually go adjust that fine and fee. So, that's not a big deal.
Legally, we can get rid of fines and we're a fine-free for the library, but we can't legally get rid of
It's gifting of public
fees,
funds
yeah, so.
if you don't charge them. And so, right now, it's not a big deal, I don't think, for an academic library that can hold their diploma hostage, right? Before they return their materials. But for us, we deal, I did a count the other day, that we do about 1,500 billing action items every week. So we do around 6,000 a month of billing, and that's not items being returned, that is applying a billing.
Lost item recovery is a huge thing, like when I started the job, the very first thing that I had to do was do an accounting, this is pre-folio, of how much money was out there as liability of lost items, and at the time it was something like $7 million.
Right. So in 2022, we found that after having been on Folio for a year, that there was a lot of material that just was never going to come home. And so we designed and implemented a workaround solution where we keep the item price information in a custom note on the item. And then we reference that we have a flat fee of $10.79 that gets applied to the item. Our process goes and looks for that $10.79 and then looks up the associated item information, grabbing the item price from the note field, and then does an update, just a line update on the billing line. And so nothing gets touched except that one denomination. There's one decimal number field that gets updated on the bill. And by the time the customer sees it, it happens every 45 minutes or so, right after the fines fees process kicks. By the time the customer sees it, it's been adjusted to the actual cost of the item.
And the source of the.
That's it.
Sure.
So this is, when you're talking about a public library that might be interested in migrating, the fact that there's no place to put an item price on an item record means that they're losing that valuable, literally valuable metadata from a previous system. And so we were lucky enough that we still had our Horizon data, so we were able to backfill that information from there. However, the other source is that we connect to the acquisitions module on the PO line and grab the particular unit price of the item, and we'll create that lost charge note value when we need to. So not only do we have it maintained from historical data in Horizon, but anytime we have new acquisitions, it's updated from there as well.
Do you not feel an appreciation for the devaluation?
Yeah.
Yes, neither appreciation nor
Yeah,
depreciation.
so you know, it's whatever you paid for it.
Mhm.
There.
Retail price.
Is that a legal requirement or just a pragmatic? Avoids you having to go and actually look up like how much it costs now and who could deliver it or whatnot?
That's a good question. I doubt it's legal.
Yeah.
Requirement.
I doubt that Horizon offered the feature,
Right.
right? And so because we didn't have it, it was never a thought. However, one of the, I do have a JIRA open for item cost field. But I do think that libraries might want to add an appreciation, just a percentage or something,
Yeah.
right?
Like after 10 years.
Yes, exactly, or a depreciation,
Yeah.
right? You might find that a particular collection gets circulated a lot, and well, that book isn't worth. Are you we're representing the replacement cost of the book or the value of the book, right? And so a lot of institutions will be able to make that judgment call if that feature does get added to fees files. That's all.
I've heard it asked for both ways.
Yeah, I have to.
By the same library.
Yes, yeah. And I think appreciation, right, it makes sense to add the inflation or the cost of labor or whatever to replace that. That makes sense in my mind. The accounting department likes to see smaller denominations carried on their books, right? And so that boils down to an institution's, policies and preferences.
And this, historically, libraries were trying to not be bookstores.
Right.
So
Yeah,
if we lower the cost, then suddenly something that might have appreciated becomes a target.
You were in the incident reporting tool, you were talking about the auditability of that before. So I know that there is some audit functionality that's been added to Folio in the last year or so for a few apps. I know for the orders app, there's an audit capability, and I think that was done in a generic way that it's meant to be attributable to other data, but I don't know to the extent that that's happened. So I'm just wondering if that's an avenue you would look at for the auditability. Yeah.
we'll take note of that. Any other questions? No questions on Zoom? Speak on forever multi-piece?
I hope this inspires you.
Yeah,
Create your own apps.
yeah.
It's doable.
Yep.
And it is really one of the secret powers of Folio.
And hopefully within a month or two, we'll have a blank CRUD application that's ready to download with all the documentation you need to break it right away. So there you go.